All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Today's presentation focuses on zero trust microsegmentation, a critical component of a robust cybersecurity strategy. We'll address common misconceptions and demonstrate how implementing this approach can be a smoother process than anticipated. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ben Collar. I'm a senior systems engineer with Illumio and a cybersecurity advocate with a love for hitting the open road. Being a car guy, I love to make car analogies, and over the years, just like we've seen improvements in car safety features, we've also seen improvements to cybersecurity strategy, similar to how a car has airbags, seatbelts, and crumple zones nowadays. A strong cybersecurity strategy needs a multi-layered approach to be successful. So, I want to discuss a critical strategy for mitigating the impact of cyber attacks. Zero trust segmentation. Imagine a cyber attack striking your organization. Traditional security might leave you scrambling to contain the damage, potentially causing service outages. Zero trust takes a proactive stance. It divides your network into smaller, isolated segments. Each segment has its own access controls. This creates a virtual fortress where even if an attacker breaches one area, they're confined and prevented from reaching critical systems or disrupting other services. So let's talk about the benefits of microsegmentation during a cyber attack. So some of the things to highlight are the ability to limit the attack scope because the attacker would be restricted to the compromised segment. They're not going to be able to laterally spread as easily. You are going to be able to do things like maintain service availability because those unaffected network segments can continue to function, ensuring business continuity. You also will be able to have faster incident response. The security teams can focus on isolating and eradicating the threat within that breach segment, allowing them to focus their resources there. So let's imagine a hospital network, for example. A ransomware hits the administrative segment of the hospital. With microsegmentation, patient data remains secure in a separate segment, and critical medical services like surgeries can continue uninterrupted. In today's threat landscape, this type of proactive defense is essential. Microsegmentation acts as a digital shield, minimizing disruption and ensuring service availability even during cyber attacks. Maintaining services under attack can really help to demonstrate an organization's commitment to its customers and its ability to weather any storm. So let's talk a little bit about ransomware architecture. So starting here from the top, we have the payload. So in the context of a ransomware attack, a ransomware payload refers to the malicious code that's specifically designed to encrypt the victim's files, so allowing them to make those inaccessible to that user and essentially unusable for the business, and then deliver a ransom note, so something to inform the victim that their files are encrypted and demand payment, typically in cryptocurrency, for a decryption key. Therefore, the ransomware payload is the core malicious element that directly disrupts the victim's system and the data. As we look at the next in this chain here, the downloader is a program that's designed to download the actual ransomware from a remote server controlled by the attackers. It often operates in the background and can be disguised as legitimate software or exploit vulnerabilities to gain access to the system. A dropper is a type of malware that acts as a delivery vehicle for the ransomware payload. Unlike downloaders, droppers typically already contain the ransomware within themselves. Upon execution, the dropper extracts and installs the ransomware on the affected device. Droppers can further be categorized typically into two categories: either a persistent dropper, which is designed to reinstall themselves if removed, making them more difficult to typically eradicate, and then your non-persistent droppers, which typically are going to self-destruct after installing the payload. The last item here is the stager. This is typically smaller and more evasive of a program than a full-fledged downloader or dropper. This is going to be because its primary function is simply establishing communication with the attacker's server and potentially downloading additional malicious components, including the final ransomware payload. Stager programs can be used to bypass initial security measures and act as a stepping stone for deploying the ransomware. Finally, as we get to the exploit and the delivery, the exploit, once delivered, the ransomware will typically leverage software vulnerabilities to gain a foothold in the system and wreak havoc. This can occur multiple different ways. It could be through an exploit kit, something that's a pre-packaged toolkit that houses various exploits that target specific software vulnerabilities. If the attacker identifies a vulnerable system, this exploit kit can automatically deploy the appropriate exploit to compromise the system. Then you have the dreaded zero-day vulnerabilities. This would be a previously unknown vulnerability that has not been seen in the wild, and therefore systems are not going to have a patch readily available for them. So essentially, how delivery and the exploit work together is attackers are typically going to use various different methods, such as a malicious download. It could be attached to an email to deliver this ransomware payload to the system. And then the payload is going to attempt to exploit vulnerability within the system software. And if the vulnerability exists, it grants the ransomware unauthorized access and control over the system. The ransomware then encrypts the victim's files, rendering them inaccessible, and demands a payment for decryption. When we look at the last stage here, the delivery stage, this focuses on how the ransomware initially reaches the system. So it's typically going to be those common ways that I mentioned, but we also have seen things like RDP protocols be abused to spread ransomware, or even things all the way down to removable media. So something that you may attach to the system, not knowing that there is potentially something malicious there. So every attacker, to be successful with their attack, ransomware attack, is going to need lateral movement because the ransomware needs to spread throughout the environment. So when we look at the slide here, we can kind of see that 70% of ransomware uses the RDP protocol. It's taking commonly used protocols that have legitimate business uses and repurposing those to spread something like ransomware throughout an environment. So this can be very difficult to contain if you don't have tight controls throughout the network. And then coming back to the ransomware architecture for a moment, what we see is that while things like EDR are important, they cover certain stages of the ransomware architecture. You also need things like microsegmentation because microsegmentation is going to create network security zones around critical systems and data. By restricting communication between these segments, you can prevent a compromised device from infecting others, limiting the impact of the attack. So, in summary, the layered defense approach is essential to be able to effectively combat a ransomware attack. By understanding the ransomware architecture and implementing appropriate security measures at each stage, you can significantly decrease the risk of a successful attack on your organization. So for the longest time, when we thought about a defense in depth strategy, organizations traditionally viewed defense in depth strategies as a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity as a whole. However, this approach can now be adapted to implement localized defense in depth strategies, further securing high-value assets like financial data or intellectual property. So as you can see here in the slide, microsegmentation is not going to replace your EDR in any use case. It's going to augment the security capabilities and add to them with giving you a perimeter around that system so that if there is something like a zero-day vulnerability or some type of exploit, you're going to have that tight network control until you can take action with a tool like your EDR tool. And most importantly, why is this becoming a bigger issue? Well, one of the reasons is artificial intelligence. So while we've all heard plenty about AI in the last year, when it comes to cybersecurity, the rise of AI presents a double-edged sword. It does offer potential advancements in cybersecurity, but it also equips the attackers with sophisticated tools to exploit vulnerabilities. So really, we have to anticipate AI-powered attacks becoming more prevalent in the future and adapt our defenses accordingly to keep up with this attack. So let's take a look at a particular example here. So in this slide, we have an AI regenerative phone home morphine attack, where you can see as the slide kind of builds out, here's the first attempt where they were not successful, but the AI is going to automatically go ahead and update the code and try something else. So it's kind of like thinking of it almost as a shape-shifting threat. So imagine the attacker has breached your network, but instead of stealing data and disappearing, this attack code regenerates. It's constantly adapting its form to bypass defenses. This is not science fiction either. It's the potential future of AI-powered attacks and something that needs to be accounted for. So in this particular slide, as we look, as it's built out here, you can see that after a couple different attempts, that the AI altered the code and finally was able to bypass the defenses within the network. This is something that you're going to have to be able to account for within your strategies for protecting your organization from cybersecurity attack. The problem with AI being introduced into this is because this malicious code could potentially learn and adapt within your network. It could phone home to a central server, receiving updates and morphing into new variants. Traditional signature-based detection is going to fail as the attack constantly changes its shape. So you could kind of think of it like this. Think of it almost like a virus that mutates every time it encounters an obstacle. This makes it nearly impossible to eradicate with traditional methods. Regenerative attacks pose a significant threat because they continuously adapt. They can linger undetected, causing more long-term damage, and AI can automate the attack process, making it faster and more widespread. So the rise of AI-powered attacks is going to demand a paradigm shift within cybersecurity. We must move beyond static defenses and adopt a layered approach that combines things like advanced detection, segmentation, and continuous monitoring. Another thing to remember is that staying ahead of this type of threat is going to require constant vigilance. It's going to require adaptation of security strategies. So this isn't something that you're going to just be able to get particular controls in place and not have to worry about augmenting them or potentially enhancing them over time. The attackers are going to be enhancing their attacks and changing them with being able to use AI. So this is something that you're going to have to account for within an organization. But the main thing that I want to say is the answer here, though, is not just more AI. That's not what's going to win this battle. We don't want to battle AI with AI. It's actually much more straightforward and fairly basic. The answer is going to be something that we've all heard of, just like AI. Another buzzword that I know has been probably overused throughout the industry, but that's zero trust. And the reason that I'm standing here promoting zero trust as an answer to AI attacks is that zero trust assumes no implicit trust within the network. So it's not going to be easily tricked by a AI attack morphing and trying something different. The AI-powered cybersecurity tools out there, I mean, they have their uses. They can play a role in threat detection and analysis, but zero trust architecture provides a more robust foundation for defense against evolving cyber threats, including those powered by AI. So, implementing zero trust can sometimes feel like a chicken and the egg situation. This is because building a zero trust architecture requires multiple security measures to be in place simultaneously. For example, let's look at MFA. You might need multi-factor authentication to verify users, but implementing MFA often relies on a secure directory service, which may require additional zero trust components for robust access control. Similar to how a chick hatches from an egg and then matures into a hen, you don't need every zero trust element perfect from the start. You want to focus on the core principles to begin with. So these are going to be things like continuous verification, least privilege access, implementing those stronger authentication methods like MFA, segment your network, like what you can do with a tool like Illumio, and monitor user activity. This is an iterative approach. As you establish these foundational elements, you can enhance them and integrate additional zero trust controls. So avoid getting stuck in this which comes first mentality. Focus on a phased approach to zero trust. Start with those core principles, fortifying them, and then gradually building upon them. Successful zero trust implementation is more of a journey than a one-time destination. This isn't something that you're going to get done in one day or even 1 month. It's something that you're going to bring out typically in a phased approach throughout your organization, but getting these core elements right from the start gives you some of those key controls in place. Like, for example, microsegmentation. Taking something like environmental separation and being able to go in and have tight controls to show an auditor if they look at your organization and they're saying, what controls do you have in place? Do you have environmental separation? Well, if you have done microsegmentation, you're going to be able to show them that, yes, we have separation from our OT and our IoT environments and our dev and our prod environments. We have these controls in place, and there is no connectivity between these different environments. So let's look at some of the design principles of a zero trust architecture. So the first rule of zero trust is to never trust, always verify. Kind of like the term, is pretty self-explanatory. But in addition to always verifying, you're going to have that continuous authentication for every user, device, and application, regardless of its location or origin. You're also going to implement things like a least privilege access control. So this is going to be the principle of only granting the minimum access rights needed for users to perform specific tasks. Back in the day, many of us know, you'd get on the corporate VPN, and then all of a sudden you can have access to any of the internal services within the network, depending on what the segmentation looked like. This was a far too wide open approach that resulted in quite a few cyber attacks spreading and moving laterally within organizations that could have been easily contained with microsegmentation. So the blast radius of a potential breach is one of the things that you're going to want to be able to minimize, and zero trust is going to allow you to put some of those controls in place. Additional considerations that you're going to want to have with some of these design principles is the data security itself. So having things like data encryption, access controls to protect sensitive information, even if a device is compromised, and then also having things like continuous monitoring and automation. So ongoing monitoring of what a user activity looks like, what the network traffic looks like, and overall system health so that you can detect suspicious behavior and potential threats. The automation is going to help you to streamline security processes, especially those redundant processes that can sometimes wear down those threat analysts from having to spend a bulk of their time dealing with these things. So it frees them up to improve response time to actual incidents and allows them to work on the things that threat analysts really want to be working on. So there are publications around zero trust. One of the ones that is a pretty good starting point if you haven't read a ton about zero trust. So NIST 800-207 is a publication that specifically talks about zero trust architecture. So a lot of the fundamentals that I've been covering here, a lot of the themes that I've been weaving into this presentation are going to be talked about much more in depth in a publication like this, but understand that this NIST publication provides a framework for you to achieve zero trust. It's not some one-size-fits-all solution or just one particular vendor. There's a particular framework that you're going to want to find out how that scales within your environment and what's appropriate for your particular environment. For example, this particular publication, while it was originally created and the target audience was U.S. federal agencies, it has much broader applicability for any organization that's looking to improve their cybersecurity posture by implementing something like a zero trust architecture. So, in a nutshell, this quote here is a fairly good one to look at for how you think about zero trust. Like, I've spent most of my career in the cybersecurity vendor side, so I've seen this term be used and abused, and stamped onto products and used extensively throughout the industry. But I can tell you without a doubt that there is not one vendor or solution that's going to help you easily just flip a switch and turn on zero trust. It's once again going to be a journey, an iterative approach that you need to take, looking at what your security stack looks like, what your current capabilities look like, in addition to what you're trying to protect. What outcomes do you want from putting this zero trust architecture in place? What is the outcome to the organization? What is the benefits? So looking at it through that lens will help you as you get inundated from all of these vendors saying they know zero trust and they can do zero trust and all of these different things. Don't get too caught up in all of the marketing and all of that stuff. Stay close to documents like the NIST zero trust architecture document. Stay close to some of these core design principles, and that will help you to make sure that you're getting the right things in place and not just putting in a simple point solution, which never helps you to fully get in that zero trust architecture. So let's also talk about shifting our focus from defense to zero trust. We know that there are limitations to traditional security methods that focus on identifying and blocking a vast array of potential threats. While blocking malicious activity remains important, it becomes secondary in a zero trust approach. This is because for years, the cybersecurity industry, which I've worked in my entire career, we started with this approach of known bad. Let's push out virus signatures. Let's push out definitions. This is the known bad stuff that you need to block. But what if you kind of flipped that on its head and looked for things that you knew were good and allowed those things and by default blocked everything else? That is the core of a zero trust type of security approach. Instead of constantly being in that reactive phase where you're waiting for that next definition to come, you're waiting for some patch to that 0-day vulnerability, why not have your network micro-segmented to the point that someone can go ahead and exploit these 4 systems, but that's as far as they're going to get within your network. You're going to have time to patch those systems. You're going to have time to respond because they couldn't take those 4 systems and go and hit 400 more systems throughout your interconnected network. Networking is great, and it provides the backbone to get business done all throughout the world. Everything from shopping on Amazon to business critical reports and things, maybe from an SAP server. So the network is there for a reason, and it's business critical to have a network. But what a lot of people don't realize is as you get all that network connectivity, you open up the ability of when there is an exploit or there is an attacker to have connectivity to all of those things, to laterally spread within the network. So there's a lot of considerations that you need to have, especially if your focus is, if you're a network engineer at an organization. This is an area that you want to make sure that you have tight controls because, like I said, the network engineers, I mean, they're great. They're kind of like truck drivers. They keep the world moving. Things would grind to a halt if we didn't have strong networks and that awesome backbone to provide all of the things that we need. But we don't want the tables turned and that used against us to facilitate an attacker to spread within a network. So zero trust embraces a critical truth. Our networks are not impenetrable. By assuming there could be a persistent threat and constantly verifying access, we minimize the impact, the potential impact of a breach. Like I just previously said, you want to make that attacker as unsuccessful in their attack as you possibly can. And when you've taken away 80 to 90% of their attack surface because they can't just simply move laterally throughout your network, you've made it very hard for this attacker to go and move on to, say, going after your intellectual property or doing a ransomware attack, say, on multiple servers that you're using to host business critical applications, and then your network's down, and then you're not able to do business. So you want to really take a look at all of these different areas of zero trust, everything from the network access to the segmentation to the data security, to really make sure that you're thinking about zero trust in a holistic way where you're able to cover all of these different key pillars. So when we look at today's complex threat landscape, having a clear picture of your network is crucial. And this is where having a cybersecurity vendor like Illumio can really equip you to be successful at this. So in this example here, you can kind of see where we leverage labeling pretty extensively throughout our product. And when we kind of build out this slide completely, you can see that Illumio is going to help you to, a bit of a pun here, illuminate your assets, vulnerabilities, and connections. So it enables you to make more informed security decisions and safeguard your critical assets and data. The reason being is that we leverage things like labeling, which can help you to secure those assets and also scale up your policy and your protection. So if you have something like a critical application in your finance New York data center, you can quickly deploy new workloads or new servers to that environment, have them properly labeled and inheriting the right security policy, because when you have good inventory of your assets and you know the network that you're trying to protect, you're going to be much more effective than just reacting to a network, some type of security alert, and then trying to gather information on what may have happened in the attack. So as we build out this slide, it's kind of a similar idea here. As we look at the network here, you can see that a smaller attack surface translates to greater security. So tools that accomplish network microsegmentation like Illumio, they empower you to fortify your network and minimize vulnerabilities, making it harder for that attacker to move throughout the network. And once again, I want to highlight, this isn't some solution that you buy Illumio and all of a sudden you have zero trust. That's not at all what we're saying here. Illumio is really just one piece of the cybersecurity puzzle. A layered security approach still remains essential to be successful with this. And for final thoughts, I like to typically throw a quote in here. And so I don't know if anyone's familiar with this quote, but the internet, while it might not be literal tubes, thinking of that way, it highlights a crucial point. And how so? Imagine each tube represents a connection point. Data travels through these connections, but if they're not properly secured, it's like having a leaky pipe. Hackers can exploit these weaknesses and siphon information. Now, while tubes might be a bit of a metaphor and a bit of an oversimplification, I think it really sheds light on the complex network of connections that require constant attention in terms of cybersecurity. A couple other things to highlight. There have been executive orders around this. So as we all know, there is a growing national security threat posed by cyber attacks. Most recently, we've seen President Biden issue an executive order, and this executive order 14028 was titled "Improving the Nation's Cybersecurity." And this executive order called for federal agencies to adopt zero trust principles as a critical pillar for improving national cybersecurity. So, you know, this isn't some far-off theory or idea. This is stuff that our actual government is using to secure itself against very powerful national state actors that are very coordinated in their attacks. And some of the key provisions of this executive order was, one, moving to a zero trust architecture. It mandates that federal agencies implement zero trust principles within a set time frame. It also talked about improving software supply chain security, so addressing vulnerabilities within the software used by government agencies, and also enhanced cyber incident reporting. So it encourages this information sharing between public and private sectors to improve threat detection and response. So while a lot of us here are not working for a government agency necessarily, there are still principles with the way that they are securing our nation against cyber attacks that are applicable to most organizations. So the industry analysts have also taken notice. Illumio is coming up on 12 years in the industry, and for years there was a lot of recognition from the analysts. It took them a while to really make a guide for folks like Gartner to make the market guide for microsegmentation, and to get folks like Forrester doing reports on this stuff. But as we had more success securing very highly regulated environments like the financial industry, we found that we were getting more recognition throughout the industry, and analysts were starting to take notice. So this is a valuable guide on microsegmentation. Gartner has published it as recent as 2023. There was a lot of best practices that you can understand from these reports that it will be crucial for securing your network. And kind of connecting it back to Illumio, our solutions are aligned with the principles outlined within this guide, giving you a powerful approach to implementing microsegmentation effectively. So one thing to highlight from this report that I want to call out with this slide is the fact that Gartner is predicting a surge in microsegmentation adoption. There've just been, we all see the news. There have been one too many successful ransomware attacks. If legacy firewalls and traditional ACLs and traditional segmentation worked, we wouldn't see massive cyber attacks that have been able to take down networks and stop business from happening for organizations through successful cyber attacks. So microsegmentation is a real thing. It's been industry adopted. It's not just some buzzword. The industry analysts have affirmed that this is, as well as, like we're seeing with the executive orders, this is something that has been confirmed within the industry. And Gartner calls out, by 2026, a staggering 60% of organizations pursuing zero trust will leverage multiple microsegmentation methods. This is a significant jump from the mere 5% in 2023. And this trend highlights the growing need to isolate critical assets and minimize the attack surface in today's evolving threat landscape. So a little bit about Illumio. As you can probably tell, we consider ourselves a leader in zero trust security. We empower organizations to implement critical defense strategies. That strategy is microsegmentation. We offer a comprehensive suite of solutions. Our platform is fairly straightforward. We cover all the critical areas of an organization. So our Illumio core, it secures your data center and your hybrid environments. Illumio endpoint, this is going to extend protection to mobile devices as well as cloud workloads. And then the Illumio Cloud Secure, which is our newest product, which provides visibility and control across multi-cloud deployments. So these make up the Illumio platform, and as you can see from some of our customers, this is something that's been used in large enterprises. We've been recognized from analysts, and we're not just some startup. We've been doing this for over 10 years. We are a global company. We're deployed across the globe to many very distributed enterprises that need to protect things across the world within their environment. So there's a lot that we can do to help you with the microsegmentation project. And just to kind of close things out here, we do have a presence here at ElevateIT. We are at booth 401. We'd love you to come by, say hello, grab some swag. Really appreciate everyone's time today and listening to this presentation. And thank you.